just when you think you know Jesus, there's so much more. There's so much more. I don't know about you guys, but it's like watching the show 24. I don't know how many of you guys watch TV, but some nights when I put Jaden down, that's my son's name, me and my wife enjoy this date that we have on Monday nights. It's called 24 Night. We have a love affair with this show. But when you watch it, you think you have the show's formula down. You think you know what's going to happen next. But they throw you. They completely throw you. You think this guy's going to die. You think that's going to die. And they don't. And then what they do is they kill this guy. And then they kill this guy. All in the same episode. And you're like, what's going on? I don't want to spoil anything for you guys who don't watch the show. But you're led to start to learn very quickly that you don't make assumptions. Right? You try not to follow a formula, and they don't follow a formula, and that's what makes the show very successful. So yeah, quickly you learn not to make any assumptions. But even then, you keep thinking to yourself, you always let it think again. People have many different opinions of who Jesus is. But he's so much more than we realize. God is so much bigger than we make him out to be. And we see this happening with the disciples. They think they've got this idea of who Jesus is. In fact, they even acknowledge that he is the Christ. He is the Messiah. He is the one. But their ignorance, their true ignorance, is made plain for us in this chapter. Actually, the whole story unfolds in the beginning of the chapter, where Jesus performs this miracle where he multiplies the loaves and feeds 4,000 people. And afterwards, Jesus turns to his disciples and warns them. He gives them a pretty unusual warning. He says, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees. And it totally confuses them. Now, if you remember, the Pharisees are the ones that work against Jesus. They're out to get him, and they just don't like what he's about. Because he makes them look bad in all their righteousness. And the disciples' reaction to his warning is like, huh? What? Jesus, what are you talking about? Well, are you saying that we don't have enough bread? I mean, before they fed 4,000 people, and Jesus is talking about yeast, bread. Don't we have enough bread? What he's saying as a warning to them, he's trying to help them understand this mindset that the Pharisees have. In verse 21, Jesus says, do you not yet perceive or understand? Or your hearts hardened? Having eyes, do you not see? And having ears, do not hear? And do not remember? Do you still not understand? That's a series of harsh questions to his disciples. Immediately following, though, Jesus heals a blind man. And that's where we start reading our passage here. But it's a very peculiar miracle. When you read this passage, or if you had read it before, did you ever just scratch your head and wonder, what is this all about? Why is this so unusual? It's a partial miracle. Now, Jesus had been performing all these miracles all along with the disciples, and the effects were immediate. Things happened right away. There was immediate results. But here, we get a partial miracle. A blind man gets healed miraculously, and he doesn't see all that clearly just yet. What's up here? Why was this blind man not completely healed? Did Jesus just kind of like run out of power? Is he showing off? What's going on here? The story that Mark plays out for us here in this passage is that this miracle, this event is for his disciples. The disciples were not seeing. This pattern is made recognizable to us in the text, the surrounding text that sandwich this miracle. It's actually a very common technique that we find in Mark. He tries to make a clear point in this technique. Look for it next time you read through. He does this a lot. He sandwiches these texts together and makes a point. Let's look at the buns of the sandwich then. In verse 27, Jesus asks this question: who do people say I am? Some say Elijah, some say some prophet. And then he turns it to them and says, who do you say I am? And Peter speaks up, right? He says, you are the Christ. In Greek, that also means the Messiah, which is the Hebrew term for it. Both of them mean the anointed one. Peter gets it. Or does he? The story reads on, and it's like a slap in his face. Looking further, we see that Jesus begins to state very clearly, very plainly to his disciples, what he must do and endure, and what this mission he has on earth is all about. But what does Peter do? How does Peter react? He rebukes Jesus. He goes, no way! Stop talking like this, Jesus. You're the Messiah. That means you're the man. You can't be talking like this. You can't talk like this, Jesus. No, this is nonsense. Jesus loves his disciples. And he rebukes Peter. You just don't get it. You don't understand. Get behind me, Satan. That's a serious accusation, don't you think? Can you imagine being in Peter's shoes? Can you imagine Jesus saying to you, get behind me, Satan? He's calling Peter Satan. Imagine that. A Messiah can mean many things in this world. The working definition that the disciples had to do with power and prestige. But, who could blame them? If we think about somebody who's coming to save us, we don't normally think of somebody who's coming to save us who's mousy, shy, timid, humble. We don't think of somebody who's thin. We usually think of some guy who sticks his chest out, kind of like maybe wears an S on his chest. Right? He's got good looking hair, maybe he's blonde. I don't know. But when we think of somebody coming to save us, we think of somebody strong and mighty. Maybe somebody who's even charming. The disciples' sight, our sight, needs a little correction. Sometimes Jesus doesn't fully reveal himself to us in order to reveal something greater about himself. He wants us to keep on believing, keep on trusting, keep on depending on him. Sometimes he doesn't answer our prayers right away so that our hearts can be shaped rightly. This is interesting. Let's go back to the text. Peter rebukes Jesus. Now, what's interesting about this is that Peter rebukes Jesus in the same way that Jesus rebukes demons. If you read throughout the Gospels, you find Jesus rebuking the demons, and they obey him. Peter does that to Jesus. Now, the word to rebuke means to bind up